The morning had started like any other inside the glass and steel tower of Halstead Media, one of the most ruthless corporate environments in the city. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, keyboards clicked like a quiet storm, and beneath it all, the quiet desperation of people trying to prove themselves filled the hallways. Nina Ramirez, 26 years old, walked into the building with her head down, gripping her reusable coffee cup like a shield. She was an intern, but not the kind who fetched lattes or typed memos. Nina had dreams. She wanted to be a journalist, a real one. She wanted to write stories that mattered, stories that helped people. But that dream felt very far away. Today, she was assigned to floor 17, the editorial wing. She was supposed to assist the executive editor, Mr. Harrow, a man known more for his temper than his talent. He had published big pieces before, yes, won awards even. But now, he mostly barked orders and dismissed new ideas before they left anyone's lips. Nina had only been there 3 weeks. Her badge still didn't open half the doors, but she kept her chin up, always polite, always hardworking. She learned names, she brought snacks, she didn't complain. Yet, no matter how much effort she put in, she felt invisible. And that's what made what happened next so strange. Around 9:30 a.m., just as Nina was printing out a press packet, the copier jammed again. This was the 3rd time that week. She sighed and opened the machine, poking around helplessly. Toner dust smeared across her hands like war paint. From behind her, someone spoke. Paper feeds crooked, that bottom tray sticks. The voice was calm, gravelly, almost soothing. Nina turned and saw a man crouching beside the copier. He wore dark coveralls and had a slight sheen of sweat on his forehead. There was a toolbox at his feet and a small flashlight tucked behind one ear. He looked like he belonged to the maintenance crew, except for his eyes. They were kind, really kind. Thanks, Nina mumbled, stepping aside. I think this machine hates me. The man chuckled. It hates everyone, but don't take it personally. Nina smiled politely. She assumed he was one of the janitorial staff. It wasn't uncommon for them to help with broken equipment when the tech team didn't show. Still, something about him stood out. He didn't rush. He was careful, methodical, and he didn't seem annoyed or tired like most people around here. You're new, he said, not looking up. Double quotes. Yeah, intern. He nodded thoughtfully, as if that explained the world. I'm Nina, she added, feeling a little awkward. The man straightened slowly and wiped his hands on a cloth. You have good energy, Nina. Keep it. She blinked. Thanks. What's your name? He paused, then shrugged. Just here to fix things. And before she could ask more, he disappeared around the corner, toolbox in hand. Nina stood there staring at the copier. It worked perfectly now. She returned to her cubicle, confused but strangely calm. By noon, she'd almost forgotten the whole thing until she saw him again. This time he was in the hallway, pretending to mop a floor that wasn't dirty. But he wasn't watching the mop. He was watching people, especially the senior executives, and no one paid him any attention. Nina watched him for a few seconds. He met her eyes briefly and nodded once, as if to say, don't tell. And that's when a strange suspicion began to take root. That night, Nina Googled the company maintenance team. Nothing, no photo, no employee list. She even asked the security guard downstairs the next morning. We don't have a guy who matches that description, he said. You sure? Yep. Only to janitor's workday shift, and they're both women. Nina's heart skipped. Who was this guy? Was she imagining things? But things only got weirder from there. Later that afternoon, Nina found herself in the break room alone, eating a granola bar and trying not to cry. Harrow had just torn apart her research, told her she had no instinct, that she should try data entry instead. She hadn't even replied, just nodded and left. As she sat there, eyes burning, she heard a soft clink. The vending machine beside her started whirring. A small packet dropped. She looked up. The man was there again, wiping his hands with a rag. Snickers, he said. They help, at least, they used to. Nina couldn't help it. She smiled through her tears. You always show up when stuff breaks. He nodded. Sometimes people too. You got a name yet? She asked, wiping her cheek. I got a lot of names, he said. You can call me Keanu. Nina froze. Keanu, she echoed. He gave her a half smile. Don't say it too loud. I'm undercover, she laughed, then frowned. Wait, like Keanu Reeves. He winked, then turned and walked out. Nina stared after him, mouth open. It couldn't be. That couldn't be Keanu Reeves. Not fixing copiers. Not cleaning floors. Right? She went back to her desk and tried to shake it off. Maybe he was joking, or maybe his parents were just fans of the actor. But the more she thought about it, the more unsure she became, especially when she started noticing other strange things. One morning she saw him leaving the executive elevator. No badge, no security. Another time, she found him inside the server room, alone, even though access was locked to IT only. And then there was the day she overheard two marketing assistants whispering about a strange man in the supply closet who knew way too much about company finances. By the end of the week, Nina had a theory, and she was going to prove it. But before she could, she got called into the conference room. It was Friday. Everyone was there. Mer, Harrow, the VP, the creative director, even the CEO. And sitting in the back, unnoticed by most, was the janitor. Nina single quotes as stomach flipped. Nina, the CEO said, your pitch last week, the one Harrow dismissed, we'd like you to expand it. She blinked. Wait, you read it? Yes, and we think it has potential, Mr. Harrow looked irritated. Someone passed it along. The CEO added. Nina glanced at the back of the room. The janitor was gone. In his place, the door slowly closed. The next morning, there was a handwritten note on Nina's desk. You're better than you think. Keep writing. K. And for the first time in her life, Nina felt seen. Really seen. What she didn't know yet was that everything was about to change. Because Keanu Reeves wasn't just there to fix copiers. He was there for a reason. And that reason, it had everything to do with her. By Monday morning, Nina's hands were trembling slightly as she typed. Not from fear, exactly, but from a kind of breathless curiosity. The note Keanu left on her desk had not only changed the tone of her weekend, it had made her question everything. She hadn't told anyone, not her roommate, not her manager, not even her own journal, the idea that Keanu Reeves, could be walking around Halstead Media in disguise felt completely absurd. But if it wasn't him, then who was this man who kept showing up at exactly the right moment, who understood her even before she spoke, and who apparently had access to places no intern, and certainly no janitor, should ever see? And why did he care about her, her instincts, the very ones Mr. Harrow mocked last week? Were telling her something big was going on. So she started watching, not like stalking or spying, just observing. When she walked past the elevators, she noticed the same utility door left slightly ajar every morning. When she passed the server room, there was a faint hum and sometimes laughter, low and quiet, as if someone inside was amused by what they saw on the monitors. When she stayed late in the office, there was always a strange flicker on the 22nd floor, a floor that had supposedly been under renovation for months, but no one ever mentioned it. And that was the strangest part. On Tuesday evening, the copier broke again, this time badly. Papers jammed everywhere. Smoke puffed out like the poor thing had just given up on life. Perfect, Nina muttered. She was supposed to copy handouts for the senior board meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and now the machine looked like a collapsed lung. That's when the lights in the supply room flickered. And just like that, he was there again. Same overalls, same calm presence. Rough day, he asked, opening the lower panel of the copier without being asked. Do you always sneak up on people? She asked, folding her arms, pretending to be annoyed, but mostly relieved. He didn't answer, just started working with quiet focus. Nina bit her lip, then asked, you said you were undercover. Why? He looked at her, really looked. Because some things can't be seen from the top floor. She paused. Like what? He took a deep breath, wiped toner from his fingers, and said, like who's invisible and who isn't? Nina didn't fully understand, but something in his voice made her chest ache. Before she could speak, he looked over and added, you're not invisible, Nina. You just haven't been seen by the right people yet. She blinked, stunned. Double quotes I I want to believe that. Good, he said, because what's coming next, you'll need to. He stood and packed up his tools. Wait, she said. What's coming? He gave her that same half smile. Truth. And then he was gone again. Nina barely slept that night. She kept replaying the conversation in her head. What did he mean by truth? And what did he know that others didn't? By Wednesday, she was asking more questions. She spoke with Frank from accounting, who casually mentioned seeing a weird guy in the server closet last week. She talked to Priya from HR, who said someone had erased all logs from the 22nd floor's access panel. And then she searched the internal shared drive. Deep in a folder mislabeled Office Renovations 2017, she found a file called realtruth_final.mp for It was locked. Password protected. No metadata. No previews. Just a strange note in the description. When you're ready to see it, you will. Nina leaned back in her chair. What was this? Why was a video hidden in a fake renovation folder? She tried a few obvious passwords. Truth, Halstead, Copier, none worked. And then she remembered. You're not invisible, Nina. You just haven't been seen by the right people yet. On a whim, she typed, seen by 9th file unlocked. She hesitated, then hit play. It was grainy, security camera footage, but it wasn't of the building. It was footage from inside a hospital, dated 6 months ago. Nina watched, frozen, as she saw a woman, unconscious, being rolled into a trauma room. 2 nurses rushed beside her. The caption read, Employee number 728, Maria Ramirez, code blue. Nina's mouth went dry. That was her mother's name. She hadn't spoken about her mother to anyone at work, and her mother had died 7 months ago. She hit pause. Heart pounding. There was a second file now, unlocked beneath the first. Maria_2023_voice_note. Wav. Nina clicked play. Her mother's voice, weak but clear, spoke through the headphones. If you're hearing this, it means someone saw you when you thought no one did. Baby, you've always had a light inside you. Don't let them dull it. Tell the stories, all of them, even the ones they want hidden. Nina couldn't breathe. Who recorded this? How did it end up in Halstead's system? And who gave it to her? The answer, of course, was clear. Keanu. But how? That night, she waited. Past 9 p.m., when the halls were empty. At 9:37, the elevator to the 22nd floor lit up. Nina stepped inside. It was dim, quiet. The hallway smelled faintly of coffee and wood shavings. She turned the corner, and there, he was not in overalls. In a black t-shirt and jeans, sitting beside a small projector, watching old news footage on a wall. He turned when he heard her. You came, he said softly. You left my mom's voice in that folder. She wanted you to have it. But how do you? I was there, he said. At the hospital. I visit places sometimes. Hospitals, shelters, schools. Not as me, just someone who listens. Nina felt tears stinging. She remembered you? She asked. She said, you wanted to be a journalist, that you had fire in you. I don't understand. Why me? He stood. Because you care. And because Halstead doesn't want the world to know what's really going on behind their glass doors. What do you mean? There's a story here, Nina. One bigger than just you or me. It's about power. About silencing truth. About burying people like your mom under policy and paperwork. He pulled a folder from a drawer. Inside were photos. Employees who had been harassed. Reports that had been deleted. Internal audits that were never filed. This place buries truth, he said. But you dig it up. Nina swallowed hard. Why not go public yourself? Keanu's eyes darkened slightly. Because if I do, it's just a celebrity headline. People think I'm making a movie or chasing relevance. But you're real. You're the voice they won't see coming. She looked at the folder, at the names, the faces. I don't know if I'm ready. He smiled. That's how you know you are. Over the next few days, Nina worked like she'd never worked before. Every moment outside her internship, she dug into documents Keanu gave her. She built timelines, connected dots, verified stories. And all the while, he guided her. Never in public, never with witnesses. Sometimes they met in the stairwell, sometimes in the basement, sometimes in the back of the cafe across the street. He told her things no one else could have known. But he never asked for credit. Only that she finished what her mother started. Nina began to suspect her mom hadn't just been a hospital nurse. There were pieces missing, emails from whistleblowers, half-burned documents, medical records rewritten. Her mother had found something, and now Nina was chasing it. She didn't know it yet, but her article would change everything. And Keanu Reeves, or the man she still wasn't fully convinced was Keanu, would vanish the day after it went live. No trace. No note. Just one final message in her inbox. Truth has a way of waking people up, and sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. Nina sat at her desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. The headline at the top of the draft document read, "Inside Halstead, Silenced Voices." And the cost of truth. She had rewritten it 6 times already. Not because it wasn't good, it was, but because the weight of it felt enormous. Each word she typed felt like a match being lit inside a warehouse full of gasoline. She looked around the office. Her co-workers were laughing quietly over morning coffee, sharing gossip about some executive's affair. In the corner, Harrow scowled over a red line proof, completely unaware of what Nina had been building right beneath his nose. It was ready. The article was long, meticulously sourced, filled with first-hand accounts from Halstead employees, whistleblowers who had been ignored, harassed, or fired after speaking up, financial statements that revealed internal cover-ups, health violations at partner facilities, messages from top executives discussing how to contain problems, and it all pointed to one conclusion: Halstead Media was rotten at its core. Nina uploaded the final copy into a secure shared link, double-checked her anonymity measures, then clicked Publish anonymously on a journalism platform designed for whistleblowers. As soon as she did, her whole body shook. Not with fear, with relief. Because finally, her voice mattered, and she wasn't just writing for herself anymore. She was writing for her mother. By noon, the article had already gained traction. 24 shares, then 100, then 1,000. By 3 p.m., it was trending on social media under #HalsteadFiles. And people were furious. Former employees came forward. Anonymous comments poured in. Reporters from outside networks started reaching out. One even called Halstead's main office pretending to schedule an interview. Nina watched as the front desk scrambled to figure out who was leaking from within. By 4 p.m., the building was on lockdown. Security was checking ID badges. Managers were meeting behind closed doors. Whispers filled the air like smoke. Nina kept her head down. Her article was published anonymously, but someone would connect the dots eventually. She expected fear. What she felt instead was purpose. Until 4:37 p.m., that's when Mr. Harrow called her into his office. The door closed behind her with a soft but heavy click. He didn't speak right away, just leaned back in his chair, staring. Then he reached into a drawer and tossed a printed copy of the article onto the desk. "You want to explain this?" Nina stared at it. "I don't know what you mean," she said carefully. Harrow leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Don't insult me, Ramirez. You think I don't recognize your style? Your phrasing. You were sloppy with the metadata. The timestamp lines up with your logins." Nina's throat tightened. "You don't understand," she said. "People are being hurt. People are being silenced. This company pays your rent." He snapped. "You're an intern, not a hero." Nina's heart pounded. "Then fire me." Harrow blinked. Double quotes. "What?" "Fire me," she said again. "But I'm not taking it down." He stood up, towering over her. Double quotes. "Do you think a nobody like you can take down a company like this?" And then, from the shadows behind her, another voice spoke. "She's not alone." Nina turned. He was standing in the doorway. No overalls, no mop, no toolbox. Just Keanu. Dressed in a simple black jacket and jeans. Calm, grounded, unmistakable. Harrow's eyes widened. "What the? Is this a prank?" "No prank," Keanu said softly. Harrow stammered. You can't be, but I am," Keanu replied. "And I've been watching you." The air shifted. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz quieter. Harrow looked pale now. "Why?" Why are you even here? Keanu glanced at Nina. Because truth deserves allies. He turned back to Harrow. You've made this company a graveyard for good people. Nina's not the first you tried to bury. Harrow laughed nervously. Do you think you can destroy us with a blog post and a movie star? Keanu's expression didn't change. I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to amplify. He stepped closer. And she didn't publish a blog. She published evidence. Evidence. That's now in the hands of real journalists, lawyers, and your board of directors. Harrow sat back down, suddenly small. Keanu looked at Nina. Come on, we're done here. The next week was a blur. Nina was fired, officially for misuse of internal systems. But the company's excuse didn't matter anymore, because the story was everywhere. Major networks picked it up. Investigations were launched. The board suspended Harrow and two executives pending review. Whistleblowers received pro bono legal support. Pressure from the public forced Halstead into crisis. And Nina? She received 5 job offers in 4 days, but she turned them all down. Instead, she launched her own investigative media site, a small, scrappy team dedicated to exposing buried truths. She called it Lightshift, after something her mother once said, when things feel heavy, bring light. Keanu helped fund the first year, quietly. He refused to let her use his name on the site. It's your voice that matters, he said, not mine. They met once more on a bench outside the old Halstead building before he disappeared again. Nina asked him the one question she hadn't dared to before. Why me? Keanu paused, then said, because I saw you listening when no one else was speaking. 3 months later, Nina received a small package. Inside was a plain key and a handwritten note, for when the next story needs to be unlocked. And she understood. He was still out there. Somewhere. Not just a movie star, not just a man in disguise, but someone who saw broken things and quietly fixed them. A light drizzle pattered against the rooftop window as Nina sat alone inside the new office of Lightshift. It wasn't fancy, just a single room above a sandwich shop with a leaky ceiling and walls that still smelled faintly of onions. But it was hers. Her story had reached people, and for the first time, those people were reaching back. Emails poured in daily, stories of injustice, evidence of corruption, cries for help, but she hadn't heard from Keanu in over 2 weeks. She kept replaying their last meeting in her head, the way he had said when the next story needs to be unlocked, and the way he vanished afterward, just like a quiet hero in one of those old books her mother used to read. The key he'd left her sat on her desk, untouched. It was small, heavy, old-fashioned, the kind of key that didn't belong to anything modern. What door did it open? That question haunted her every day. And then, just before midnight on a Tuesday, she received a message, not an email. A paper letter slipped under the door. It was sealed in a plain envelope, her name written on it in simple, elegant handwriting. Inside was a single line: the truth your mother died for is still buried. Start at the place they erased. Beneath that was a scribbled map. And beneath that, the smell of rain. The next morning, Nina packed a small satchel with a notebook, recorder, flashlight, and the key. She wore her old hoodie and jeans, nothing to attract attention. The address on the map led her to a long-abandoned medical clinic 2 hours outside the city. She recognized the name, Rosewood Community Hospital. It had shut down the year her mother died. According to the press at the time, funding cuts were to blame. But, according to Keanu, that wasn't the real reason. Nina pushed open the rusted front doors. The inside smelled of mold and forgotten time. Dust floated through the air like memory. She walked slowly, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Old gurneys, shattered glass, a tipped-over wheelchair. The place had been stripped bare. Yet, deep down, she could feel something waiting. Following the map, she made her way to room 104, a pediatric room. On the wall, faint hand-painted stars still glowed in faded green, and on the floor, just beneath the sink, a wooden tile had a scratch across it shaped like a letter R. She knelt. Lifted it underneath. A small box sat nestled in dust. The key fit perfectly. The lock clicked. Inside the box were 3 things: a flash drive, a folded letter with her name, a photo of her mother in scrubs, Standing beside Keanu, her breath caught. Her mother looked. Younger, stronger, eyes full of purpose. Keanu stood beside her, not smiling, but solid, like a shield. The letter trembled in her hands as she unfolded it. Me Amor. It began, if you are reading this, it means someone finally helped you find your voice. And if it was him, the quiet man with the kind eyes, then know you are in good hands. I was working on something when they shut down Rosewood. It wasn't just about budgets. They were hiding something, Nina. Medical testing. Unapproved trials. On children. I tried to speak out. They threatened me. Told me no one would believe a nurse. So I reached out to someone who might. Someone who could disappear into any building and see the truth from the inside. That someone was Keanu. He promised me that if anything happened to me, he'd make sure the truth didn't die with me. So now it's your turn. Tell the story. Finish what I started, and know that every word you write, I am with you. I love you, always. Mama Nina didn't realize she was crying until she couldn't read the last line through her tears. The flash drive held over 300 files, scanned documents, recorded conversations, internal emails, evidence of a secret project called Mira Bloom, a pharmaceutical trial funded by private investors and quietly conducted on vulnerable children without parental consent. Some had died, others disappeared. And it was all buried under layers of paperwork. But not anymore. Not with Nina holding the truth in her hands. She worked all night. By dawn, the new story was ready. This time, she didn't publish it anonymously. She signed it with her full name, Nina Ramirez, and she included her mother's photo at the top. Within hours, the internet exploded. Hashtags flooded timelines. Hashtag Mira Bloom. Hashtag Justice Forestwood. Hashtag Nina Ramirez. Parents of former patients came forward. A retired doctor anonymously confirmed the trials. Lawmakers called for immediate investigations. Major outlets begged Nina for interviews. And Lightshift, the tiny site above a sandwich shop, was now the epicenter of the biggest health scandal in years. But through it all, Nina kept asking herself one question. Where was Keanu? She didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, there was a soft knock at the door of her apartment. She opened it. And there he was. Wearing a simple hoodie, eyes tired but proud. You found it, he said. Nina stepped forward and hugged him. Without thinking, he hugged back. No words, just silence, the kind of silence that says everything. When they finally sat down inside, she asked him, "How did you meet her?" "My mom." He smiled faintly. "I was visiting hospitals under a different name, volunteering, trying to stay invisible. She was the only one who looked me in the eye and said, 'You're not here just to mop floors, are you?'" Nina laughed, through a tear. "Sounds like her. She was brave," Keanu said, "but she was scared too. They followed her, threatened her. That's when she reached out. And you kept your promise." He looked at her. "And now you're keeping it too." Nina nodded. "There's more, isn't there?" Keanu's gaze turned distant. "Always. Then I want in." He stood slowly. "You already are." Before he left, he handed her a new folder. This one was thinner. On the cover, it said one thing: "They're watching now." Nina opened it after he left. Inside were photos of a man in a dark suit, one of the investors named in the Rosewood files, shaking hands with a senator. Beneath it was a list of names, people in power, people in danger, and written in Keanu's handwriting. "Some truths don't want to be found, but we find them anyway." The next few days felt unreal. Nina Ramirez was no longer invisible. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists, news anchors, human rights groups. Her inbox was overflowing with messages of support, tips, and desperate pleas for exposure. Her social media exploded. People called her brave, a hero, the voice for the voiceless. But even as praise rained down, she felt something strange in her gut. Like she was being watched, that she had learned enough from Keanu to trust that feeling. It started with small things: the flicker of movement in her peripheral vision, the same black SUV parked near her office 2 days in a row, an unfamiliar man at the cafe pretending to read the newspaper but never turning a page. Lightshift's website was also attacked. A flood of bots tried to take it down. Her files were copied. And one night, she came home to find her desk drawer open and the folder Keanu had given her. Missing. But Nina wasn't afraid. She was furious. Whoever was behind Mira Bloom was still out there. And now they were trying to silence her just like they silenced her mother. But they didn't know something important. She wasn't alone. Keanu called her late one evening from an untraceable number. "They're baiting you," he said. "I know," she replied. "I want to take the bait." He was quiet for a moment. "They're planning something public. They want to destroy your credibility, not just scare you." "Good," Nina said. "Let them try." Keanu sighed softly. "This is the part where you either run or step onto the stage." "You taught me to stand," she whispered. There was a pause, then, "Meet me at the auditorium. Back entrance. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. The auditorium was an old one. Historic. Keanu had reserved it under a false name, claiming it was for a local film documentary project. In reality, it would become the stage for something much bigger. They had spent days planning what they called the Mirror event. It wasn't just a press conference. It was a confrontation. Nina would read the statement live. Not just the findings about Rosewood and Mira Bloom, but new revelations Keanu had dug up, including a silent partnership between one of Halstead's executives and a private pharmaceutical company now facing multiple lawsuits. It was all in a new file Keanu had titled Project Eden Protocol. This was deeper than Nina had thought. This wasn't just about children. It was about controlling research, burying failures, and branding the results as humanitarian breakthroughs. The entire front row of the auditorium had been reserved for media. Invites had been sent anonymously, and confirmation flooded in. Even international outlets wanted access. But the most important seats were in the second row, because they were being filled by people no one usually saw. Former nurses, janitors, interns, whistleblowers, the very people these systems had ignored. The lights dimmed. The cameras went live, and Nina walked onto the stage. The moment was heavy with silence. She looked out into the crowd. Dozens of faces, cameras, and then, there, near the aisle, Keanu standing at the back, silent, unblinking, a ghost with purpose. She began. Her voice shook at first, but she steadied it. She spoke of her mother, the cover-up, the trials, the children, the documents. She showed slides, faces of victims, quotes from doctors, emails from inside Halstead. She ended with the Eden Protocol. And that's when the power went out. Gasps filled the room. Someone shouted. Others panicked. Nina stayed still. "Keep recording," she whispered to her team in the dark. Emergency lights flickered on seconds later. A voice came through the auditorium's sound system, grainy, aggressive. "Stop this broadcast or face consequences." Nina's laptop glitched. The projector shut down. Live feeds were being jammed. But then, a second voice cut in. Calm, clear, familiar. Not today. It was Keanu. On a separate channel. He had anticipated the sabotage. On a backup screen, another video began to play. A secret recording from inside a boardroom. High-ranking officials discussing asset containment, public narrative control, and acceptable casualty thresholds. Faces were visible. Names were clear. The audience gasped. Nina stood tall. "You can turn off the lights," she said into the mic, "but you can't hide from the truth anymore." Within minutes, the feed was restored. Viewers around the world tuned in as Nina finished her statement. And when she walked off stage, people stood. Not for applause. But for respect. Backstage, Keanu waited. "They'll come harder now," he said. "So will we," Nina replied. He smiled faintly. "You've come a long way from the copier room." She chuckled, then grew serious. "You're leaving again, aren't you?" He nodded. "They'll be looking for me." "Will I see you again?" Keanu paused. "You'll hear from me whenever someone else needs their story told." He handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Your next truth," he said. And then, like always, he disappeared into the shadows. Nina opened the envelope that night. Inside was a faded photo. A child in a hospital bed, hooked to wires. Smiling despite everything. On the back, a name, Samaranda location, Horizon Institute, Cairo, Egypt. Beneath that, they said he died. They lied. Asterisk the wind blew hot across the dusty skyline of Cairo as Nina stepped out of the taxi. Her boots crunched against gravel outside a plain white compound on the edge of the city, the Horizon Institute. It didn't look like much. No giant signs, no welcoming gates, just tall fences, faded walls, and cameras that blinked too slowly to feel like they were actually working. She held the photo of Samar in her hand, a little boy with a bright smile and soft brown eyes. He couldn't have been more than 6 when it was taken, but that photo was dated for years ago. And according to the documents Keanu had sent her, Samar had been listed as deceased 2 years ago. Only the signature on the death certificate had been forged, and Nina had seen enough forged files to know what that meant. Someone didn't want the world to know he was alive. But why? Inside, the lobby was quiet. A receptionist looked up from behind thick glass and asked, "Appointment?" Nina smiled politely. "I'm here from the Global Children's Wellness Foundation," she said, using a name Keanu had arranged for her. The woman blinked, then nodded slowly and handed her a visitor's badge. Within minutes, she was being led down a tiled corridor by a man in a white coat who introduced himself as Dr. Fathi. He spoke in clipped English and walked fast. "Our children here are in recovery from difficult cases. Many were abandoned or medically misdiagnosed. We try our best." Nina nodded, her voice steady. "I'd like to see the recovery wing." He hesitated. "That area is sensitive." She gave him a smile that held quiet power. "I have clearance." He sighed, then pushed open a door at the end of the hallway. The recovery wing was calm, quiet. Rows of beds, children reading or coloring, soft music playing from a speaker overhead. And then she saw him. Samar. Older now, maybe 10, sitting near a window, staring out at the sunlight, legs crossed, humming a soft tune. His hair was a little longer, his face thinner, but it was him. Nina's single quotes' throat tightened. She approached slowly. "Hi," she said gently. He turned, curious, cautious. "My name is Nina." "I know," he said. Her eyebrows lifted. "You do?" He nodded. "The man with the beard showed me your video, the one where you talked about your mother." Nina blinked. "The man with the beard?" Samar smiled. "He said he was the janitor, but I think he's more than that." Nina smiled softly. Yes, he was." Samar's story came out in pieces. His mother had been part of the Mira Bloom trial. She hadn't consented. She didn't even speak the language fluently. They had tricked her into signing forms. When Samar started reacting to the drugs, they pulled him from her care and told her he had died from complications. In truth, they transferred him overseas under a false identity. And that's where he had been ever since. Hidden, medicated. Watched. Until Keanu found him. "He told me I was strong," Samar said, his voice soft. "He said I had the right to live free." Nina knelt beside him. He was right. "Are you going to help me go home?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will. But it wouldn't be easy." The moment Nina left the facility, she was followed. A black car shadowed her down the main road. She ducked into a cafe and used a back exit to shake them, heart pounding. By the time she returned to her hotel, a note had been slipped under her door. "You're digging too deep. Go home, now." She folded it, pocketed it, and packed her bags. She didn't run. She went back to the Horizon Institute the next morning, with a lawyer, a camera crew, and a representative from an international children's rights organization. Keanu had arranged it all quietly from behind the scenes. When they arrived, Samar was already waiting at the entrance, holding a small backpack. He ran into Nina's arms. The moment was caught on camera and streamed worldwide. Hashtags trended again. Hashtag find Samar. Hashtag note invisible. Hashtag truth wins. The next days moved fast. Samar single quotes' mother, who had never fully recovered from the grief, was flown to Cairo to reunite with her son. When they embraced at the airport, the world cried. Governments demanded answers. Agencies launched global investigations. Lightshift servers nearly crashed from traffic. Nina's single quotes' face was everywhere. But still, she kept looking for him. Keanu. He hadn't appeared since the Horizon Institute. And no matter how many messages she sent to their secure channel, there was no reply. Until one evening, as she sat in her new office watching the sun set behind the city skyline, she received a small package. No return address. Inside, a single object. An old, slightly rusted janitor's keyring. And a note. You don't need me to open doors anymore. You've become the key. Nina wept. Not because he was gone, but because he had given her the tools to stay, to carry the torch. To fight for others the way he once fought for her. A year later, Nina stood on a stage accepting the International Human Dignity Award. She wore a simple dress. No fancy jewelry. And beside her sat Samar and his mother, smiling. As the crowd clapped, Nina stepped to the mic. This isn't about me, she said. This is about every person who was told their voice didn't matter, every story that was buried, every life that was dismissed. We are here to dig up the truth, to speak even when it shakes us, and to remember that even the quietest among us, even the janitor fixing the copier, might be the one carrying the most powerful story of all. The room rose to their feet, and far in the back, unnoticed by most, a man in a hoodie slipped out the door, head low, smile faint. He didn't need the spotlight. He never did, because for him, fixing things quietly was enough. And the world was finally listening.